Welcome back, my Jedi friends, and in today's episode, I'm going to tell you how a fired up Bulldog kicked our asses into touch. Now, before we go any further, let me just say this probably isn't going to go down the way that you think it is. It's probably not going to be the video that you think it is. This is a story from my past which encapsulates so many aspects of working with energy that it was worth sharing. And when I was doing my little meditation, it popped into my head, and I thought this is a story that absolutely deserves to be shared. So, first and foremost, we're going back in time to round about 1989, 1990, that sort of region. And at the time, I was a young upstart working in a merchant bank. I was in the documentary credits department. Now, to simplify this for people outside of banking circles, I used to say to people, well, they're like, what's documentary credits? I'd say, well, if the trading room of a bank would be the lounge, then we're working in the toilet. I had the lowest clerical work in the department where none of the Japanese were ever seen. Not a single Japanese employee in a Japanese bank worked in documentary credits. We were the lowest of the low within the hierarchy of the bank. So there we were, sitting there minding our own business, a load of unfit folk. And myself, I was actually reasonably fit at the time, but I probably was the only one of any real fitness in there. And I played a bit of football myself. And then one day, somebody heard from one of the senior traders. Now, for the senior traders to even be talking to us was a massive thing. It's, oh, they want to talk to us. As it turned out, the traders, the people on the trading platform, they were playing five-a-side and they had some big tournament coming up. And what they were looking for was a bit of practice. What they were really looking for was a bunch of whipping boys to make them feel good about themselves. And somebody came down and challenged us. They said, can you get a football team together? Now, our football team, there were two people that were in their late 20s, early 30s. And then we had a ragtag bunch of unfitness in our team. It really was. We had the most ragtag team of not fit players, of people that couldn't really do a whole lot. We went along and we got our arses handed to us in this first game against these traders. Absolutely. Five-a-side, we got our arses handed to us. It was a ridiculous score. I can't even remember. All I remember was picking the ball out of the net, looking around the thing and thinking maybe they'll mix the teams up to make it more interesting. But no, the traders, they weren't up for mixing the teams. They didn't want a fair thing. They wanted to feel good about themselves by absolutely pummeling us. We'd never played together as a team before. There's probably a couple of players on our team that never actually played. We'd one guy that was he was in his mid 40s, early 50s. He had a huge pot belly on him, and he used to bellow orders around the office. And he spent a long time bellowing orders and not running at all. He was guilty of not marking. He was guilty of not scoring. He was guilty of giving the ball away. In fact, he was guilty of quite a lot on that particular occasion. So this would have been the classic opening scene for a film of total dysfunction, folks. It wasn't enough that we were working in jobs where we were on the lowest of the low. We were then humiliated by the senior traders who wanted to feel good about themselves. We were their practice. So, needless to say, after that, they wanted to come back and have another game. And I knew that this was going to go completely tits up, folks, completely tits up. And I didn't really see much point of playing against them with these odds. These odds, folks, it was stupid. So what I decided is that we needed an extra player. We needed at least one roll-on sub. The traders had two subs. I hadn't even mentioned that. We had the bare bones five players who were running around for an hour, some that weren't fit enough to run around for 10 minutes. They had two substitutes that were rolling on and off. So not only were they younger, fitter, they'd played together before, so they knew each other's style of play. They had substitutes as well, so they were able to continuously bring on fresh legs during this practice game. So there were a couple of the porters there. A couple of the porters that worked in the bank. They used to come up and I used to chat to them. A couple of them were Liverpool fans. I had a great relationship with the porters because they were pretty much on my level. They were on my level, folks. So, they took a shine to me. And there was one guy that came up and I cursed myself for not remembering his real name. We only ever knew this guy as Bulldog. Bulldog. He was a guy, he was probably in his mid 40s and he was built like a proverbial brick shit house. He was a big man, but not chunky. He was just solid. And he had an aura and a presence from an energy perspective that just commanded respect. When this guy walked into the room, you knew someone was turning up. And I thought, we need this guy. We need Bulldog. If we're going to have any chance against these traders, we need Bulldog in the team. And what happened was Bulldog came in. Now, there was another energy dynamic because we worked within this setting. Our manager thought because he was a manager in the office that he should be the senior manager on the pitch, and he was the worst player. So he was shouting at everyone. Not only was he not delivering himself, he didn't know what he was doing. He was just shouting for the sake of shouting, and it was absolutely nothing productive. It's very clear that he hadn't played football before. And I held my own, but I was very young, very fit at the time. I wasn't a particularly great player, but I could certainly keep up with the pace. But I was in a very small minority there. We had two players that would cut it in a reasonable run out, and one player that should never have been on the pitch, and another player who was there making up the numbers, who wasn't terrible, but he wasn't good either. So that was what we had against a team of seven that were fully functional. Now we brought Bulldog along, and he brought one of his mates from the messengers, the porters. That's what they did. They used to spend the whole day walking around delivering stuff, and they were absolutely brilliant, brilliant guys. And these two turned up. Now Bulldog, first thing he did was he pulled us all together and he said, right, he said, I want you, where do you all play? He wanted to know where do we all play. And of course, I knew where I played and nobody else really knew. He's like, well, we'll work it out. And he stood at the back. He was our central defender. He stood at the back so he could see everything. And not only was he a really solid player, but Bulldog would shout at people. And what was great was he usurped the dynamic, the energy dynamic of our manager, who was clearly out of his depth. When he started shouting, Bulldog would shout at him. So what he did was he exerted his own authority. He was a good player, a good solid player, was Bulldog. But the first game that we played, he stems the tide. We didn't win. We didn't win, but rather than get beaten by an obscene amount, there was only about 3 or 4 goals in it, which for us was a massive step in the right direction. And the main thing was that you had a presence. You had somebody that was talking to us, was shouting at us if we weren't doing it, was complimenting us if we were doing it. He spent the whole game communicating with everybody, telling us what we were doing wrong, what we were doing right, which is why he became known as Bulldog. Nobody argued with him. You just wouldn't argue with Bulldog. If he told you you were shit, you knew you were shit. And if he told you you did something right, you felt better about yourself. It was a genuine compliment. You knew you'd done something right, and then you wanted to do. I personally felt that I wanted more compliments from Bulldog because I felt that he could help us to turn this team around, or at least stem the tide. So that was our first game. We lost by about 4 or 5 goals, something like that, with Bulldog there and another guy from the messengers. So we had substitutes now. And not only that, but one of the other unfit guys had dropped out. So we'd 6 players that next time. So we had less liability. We had less liability to deal with, folks. And then they asked us for another game. Now, let's go forward about 4 games in. So we did have another game and we lost marginally, but we were getting better and we were getting better because we had an energetic presence at the back, somebody who was a leader, somebody who was telling people when they were doing well and when they were doing badly. Now, this is so relevant for energy and life, folks, that if you want better results, that sometimes you need your friends to give you a kick up the arse. You need a Bulldog in your life. And you know, if Bulldog was giving you a compliment, that you'd really done something to earn it. And this was a critical distinction. None of this toxic positivity or stuff. Like if you were shit, Bulldog would let you know you were shit. And he would make you fire you up and let the whole team know that you were the one that cost us. And in the end, even our manager, who was more scared of Bulldog than he was of any, well, he was just had enough respect for Bulldog that he started running around and getting fitter. Even our worst player started playing, started actually not being as much a liability because of the energy presence, the dynamic that Bulldog brought to this mix. Now, to cut what was an ongoing saga short, we probably ended up having about 10 games against the traders. And the final three games, folks, we absolutely kicked their asses because we knew where we were meant to be. We had serious leadership. And one thing that the traders didn't have was a leader like Bulldog communicating with everyone. They were a team, they were used to playing together, they were used to winning. But what was happening as we got better, they started getting worse at little shouting at each other, blaming each other, little niggles within the team. You shouldn't have let him score. You shouldn't let that happen. You know, they started to undermine themselves, folks, because they expected to win. We expected to get up and get our asses handed to us, and then Bulldog slowly changed that dynamic because he took control of a situation. And this is so relevant for life because so many times you'll get put in a situation with a team that you can't work with, and it's your job to either complain about it or do something about it. And Bulldog, bless you, you absolute legend. He taught me so much about energy, about teams, about communication, because everybody was a little bit scared of Bulldog. He wasn't there to be anyone's friend. He was there to play football and to win and to get the best that he could out of the team that he'd been given. And as far as being given a really shit deal, we were a shit deal. And he turned us around. The last three games we played against against these traders, we beat them. And after we'd won our third game on the trot, they never invited us back for another game. They were obviously looking for an easier target, folks, an easier target. So this is a testimony to Bulldog, you legend. Bulldog, the messenger that worked at the Bank of Tokyo back circa 1989 to 1991, you legend, you absolute legend. Because what he encapsulates is sometimes a single person will not just make the team better through them being better, but they will make everyone else, they will bring out the best in everyone around them. And they don't care if that ruffles a few feathers. And that's really important as well, folks, especially for empaths. It's nice to be nice. It's nice to say the good things. It's nice to put your arm around people every now and again. But really, sometimes the carrot doesn't work and the stick is entirely necessary. And I will tell you that Bulldog says some harsh things to me. And I knew, part of me knew, in fact, a big part of me knew when he was having a go at me, I absolutely deserved it and I hadn't been giving my best. But every single time after that, especially for those last three games, I was fired up. I was going to give everything I had because I would rather do that and and be compromised than not give everything and then have to worry about what Bulldog was going to, how he was going to judge me about letting him down. I was more worried about letting Bulldog down than I was about anything else, which raised my performance, folks. From a personal point of view, it raised my own performance, and everyone on the team obviously responded the same way as that. So, Bulldog, you legend, you absolute legend for life lessons. Sometimes we all need a Bulldog, and the Bulldog's there not to be the people pleaser, not to be highly empathic and be your best mate. They are your best mate through not being your best mate. And there's the balance, folks. It's about stick and carrot. Sometimes everybody loves the carrot, but the carrot doesn't always get you results. Sometimes you need the stick and you need the bulldog. So this is to Bulldog for those lessons that you shared with us, for raising the bar with our team of dysfunctional anti-heroes who couldn't have found, who would never have won anything in football, five-a-side, without some firm leadership. And that's what we needed. That is what we needed, my Jedi friends, and that is the story of Bulldog from my early days and how a fired up Bulldog brought out the best in a team of dysfunctional fools who had no football talent at all between them. But we turned it around and we took those traders and we embarrassed them. I just hope they were better at trading than they were at playing football, folks. That's all I can say. It's all I can say. Because they stopped playing, they soon got upset and stopped inviting us to go back. So there you go, folks. There's a double-edged sword. Sometimes if you do get better, you're just not going to get a game because no one wants to play against you. Now, is that a good thing? Well, that's open for another debate for another day. But this is purely as a reminder of what one person can do, how one person can make a difference, how one person can inspire people, and not always through being nice. And especially for empaths and the people that are attracted to this channel, I share this message because Bulldog stands out. He stands out as somebody, if I was in a tight spot, I would want him in there. He'd be the first person on the list of people if I was on a tight spot. He may not even be alive today, folks, for all I know, but nonetheless, legend, an absolute legend. And this is to demonstrate really how energy works and how showing up and getting the best out of people doesn't always involve being nice to them. Sometimes you have to stretch their comfort zones and tell them a few home truths. And we all need a few home truths every now and again, my Jedi friends. That's just the way that the cookie crumbles. And that is part of the process of waking up. It was never meant to be comfortable. It's meant to be uncomfortable. But it's when you're ready, it's time to wake up. You'll need a bulldog in your life. And for those of you that want more of my random shares, my random tales, or my random exercises that I point out to help you to energize more, then do like and subscribe, folks, because this channel is a resource to give you pieces to that jigsaw. Speaking of which, you'll find another one there. So go out and channel the inner bulldog from within you and know that sometimes it's nice to be bad.